Welcome to Music Crush, a new music podcast hosted by Flute New Music Consortium. I'm Elizabeth Robinson.
And I'm Nicole Reiner. If you like the show, please rate and review it on the platforms wherever you listen to podcasts, particularly on Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find us and grow the show. And of course, you can learn more about Flute New Music Consortium at flutenewmusicconsortium.com. Polish flutist Alicja Molitorys enjoys an active career as a soloist and chamber musician. Her collaborations with composers are numerous, and she has performed at new music festivals around the world, including, get ready, Great Britain, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, Lithuania, Turkey, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Closer to home, Alicja is the principal flutist of the Polish New Music Orchestra, a position she has held since 2000. Throughout her career, Alicja has remained active as a flute teacher. She has developed a keen interest in introducing contemporary music to the younger audience with no prior musical experience. Her PhD thesis, which she wrote at Chopin University in Warsaw, is on the different roles of a flutist during the composition process based on the newest repertoire. Alicja, welcome to Music Crush. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me for this interview. I'm excited to talk about the music that I play.
And I'm in Colorado and it's noon. It's 1 p.m. for Elizabeth in South Dakota. What time is it for you there in Warsaw?
It's 8 p.m.
Nice.
So yes, it's already evening.
Cocktail.
And actually I'm not in Warsaw, but Katowice.
Okay.
It's south of Poland.
Okay, nice.
But the time is, from Warsaw to Paris, the same time zone.
Your bio is so fascinating, and what you have been doing there in Central Europe, traveling and competing and performing so much is really unique looking to us. So I had some questions today about just some of your experiences that sound particularly not American, not familiar to our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that you won in 2018 in a competition that was a joint competition for composers and flutists that was held in Portugal. We don't have a competition like this that I know of. So could you explain how this joint competition for composers and flutists worked? And then, of course, also, anything you'd like to tell us about the piece and the composer with whom you won.
Mm-hmm. So I think that also in Europe, this competition was really unique. This is the first time I heard about it, and I got excited because at that moment I just recorded a piece called KIOLOIK. I worked with the composer Paweł Henryk on it, and I thought that the piece is really absolutely great. And so we applied for this competition, and 10 pieces around the world were chosen for public presentation during the festival, hands-on flute, at the University of Aveiro in Portugal. So when I got the message that our piece was chosen to be performed at the final, so I went to Portugal and to the conference. I also had a lecture over there. But well, when I played the piece, I think the jury had no doubts that the piece was really the best. I mean, it's not only that it has contemporary techniques, because all the pieces presented over there were full of contemporary techniques. I mean, the piece is very concise. It's like about 5 minutes, and it has a very interesting form, the timing, how it develops. Very cleverly put together the ideas, not just a mixture of what can the flute do, strange things. No, not like that. So I was really really happy, and for me and for the composer. So finally this piece KIOLOIK became the title of my CD, the album that I published last year.
Oh, nice. And we can find that online and put that in the show notes.
Yes, exactly. And I can send you the link to the score, and you can download directly from the composer's webpage.
That was my next question. You read my mind.
Yes.
Cool, thank you. I'll include that as well for people to see. You mentioned contemporary techniques. You note in your bio, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, that you have come to perform contemporary techniques without a lot of specific training in your
Yes, exactly.
younger career. I come close to fitting that description too, so I'm always interested to talk to people about that experience. How did you get interested in modern music when you didn't have teachers pushing you in that direction, and how did you teach yourself?
So I think I had this feeling that I want to play modern music deep inside me. And my professor, who was the principal flutist of National Polish Radio Symphonic Orchestra in Katowice, he performed contemporary music, but he didn't like it and he didn't push me in the direction, unfortunately. But later on, during my studies, I traveled to England. I got some scholarship and I attended flute music courses during the summer. And when I listened to flutists over there and bought one book, second book on it, I got more and more interested. And then I studied for 1 year in Sweden with Anders Julian Chapelon. He was the flutist that influenced me quite a lot during this 1 year scholarship. But still, I think that I learned much more about contemporary music after I finished my studies.
Do you have any names that you'd be willing to share with us? People whose contemporary performing inspired you when you were in England, for instance, or others when you were first getting into this world?
The best lesson I had, but it was on sonatine by Henri Dittier, so not really contemporary, but the best lesson for me personally that changed my attitude to performance was with Nizam Bustani. It was like a changing life experience. Instead of half an hour lesson, we worked well over an hour. We were late for lunch, but he could feel that he can work with me and manage to open me artistically. I mean, that I understood that I can cross my borders. I mean, the borders that, I came from communist country, It is really something that at the beginning of my career was quite difficult for me because we're taught to be like everybody the same and not to stand out and not to be proud of yourself, of your achievements. And when I traveled to England for this summer courses, I realized that people are different in different parts of the world. And this lesson with Wissam Bustani, he managed to see inside me that I can do much better because I had all the skills, technical stuff, but too closed artistically to really show off the ability that I have in depth.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it makes sense now that you're saying it, but coming from an extremely capitalist country as I do, it wouldn't have occurred to me. If you think of it as a spectrum, maybe coming from a society in which you shouldn't stand out all the way to, I don't know, I feel like we can sometimes err on the side of too egotistical in the United States and trying so hard to make ourselves stand out that it might not be organic or true to ourselves. Have you experienced anything on that spectrum that tends to go too far? I mean, what do you think is a good happy medium for you in terms of combining humility and duty and showmanship?
It's a difficult question, but I think it's possible to find this sweet spot when everything works. You have to work with your own insight.
We can all chew on it for a while.
Yes.
You mentioned a teacher that really influenced your interest in modern music. Were there pieces of music that excited you in the same way as someone starting their journey?
Yes, so it was Cassandra's Dream Song by Anthony Hall, and the piece was performed by the professor that I later studied with in Sweden. I was so shocked because I've never ever heard this kind of piece before, and it inspired me to look into this kind of music. And although I never personally performed Hans Sanders Dimsok, I performed the other piece by Brian Ferniho, and it was truly a difficult task. Yes, extremely difficult. But the fact is that in Europe, I think we have quite diverse styles of composers. Something different in Germany, it's like Helmut Lachenmann, and then French spectralism. Our conductor loves spectralism, so we play quite a lot of pieces like that. But on the other hand, play some improvisation, graphic scores, some theater, musical theater. This is the fun that I really like in the computer music, because each concert comes with not different idea, but different aim to achieve, goal to achieve, and different aesthetic, different spectrum of emotions that we are creating for the audience. And that's really absolutely fascinating about contemporary music. So much variety.
You touched on this already. I don't know if you have any more to answer here, but I had planned to ask you about your extensive travels and any new perspectives that you have gleaned from them. So obviously some big ones already that you've described for us. Anything else that, really opened up for you, new worlds?
Yes.
Or any specific trips?
Yeah, so Japan, definitely Japan. I was 4 times over there because I made friends with a Japanese pianist during my studies in Sweden. That's the funny part. Then after several years, we reconnected and started to organize concerts, both in Japan and in Poland. And we decided to play it, especially pieces composed by Japanese and Polish composers specifically. These trips to Japan, when I stayed with my friend and her parents, and this feeling at home, Japanese home, something completely different. Rinko Yoshino, that's the pianist, when she comes to Poland, she always stays with my parents, and they're also friends. This created this fantastic opportunity to look into the Japanese culture in a very close perspective. And traveling around their historical cities like Kyoto, Nara, the first capital of Japan, it was inspiring for me in the fact that when I, for example, when I was sitting in a Japanese garden, I could feel this atmosphere, the spirit that could influence, for example, Toru Takemitsu. And the same like rock garden in Kyoto temples over there. It's something totally different what I can experience in Europe. And when I heard music, for example, by Toshio Hosokawa, I could much better understand his inspiration, his sense of time, very slow, this breathing thing. Without visiting these places, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to express this properly when I play music by Japanese composers. So I think that definitely traveling to Japan expanded my possibilities to express the feelings, the emotions that otherwise wouldn't be possible to transfer through playing the flute.
That's a great endorsement for travel.
I think that this rock garden, this idea of just rocks, little white rocks and big rocks somewhere put together, and sitting there for a long time alone, looking at it and realizing the concept of their philosophy of life, of this passage of time, something so different what I experience in Europe. And also I visited shakuhachi maker. Yes, this was also amazing, and playing different flutes and looking at their traditional way of notating music. For example, when I play Haru no Umi by Michio Miyagi, we played it's for flute and a piano, but of course the original version was for shakuhachi and koto, notated totally different than Western music notation.
I mean, instruments speak so differently.
Yes, exactly. I have a shakuhachi. I received a traditional instrument as a gift, but unfortunately, I can't blow it into it. I try to, but I think it could destroy my embouchure over a long time if I practice on shakuhachi. So I prefer the other traverso flute like Chinese diji or ryuteki, the Japanese flute, traverso flute, ryuteki. It's dragon flute. So like 6 holes and you blow normally like on our flute.
Yeah, shakuhachi is so huge. Like
Exactly.
that hole is just so huge. Elizabeth, you in a previous life studied quite a bit of Japanese music. Have you tried any of these flutes?
I've done a little with the no flute, but pieces that I researched didn't have much to do with the shakuhachi, so I appreciate it from a distance.
Yeah, looks intimidating.
So I played a piece for shakuhachi and chamber orchestra, and we had a soloist from Japan, and he had the piece was by Toshio Hosokawa, and the flutist shakuhachi player. He had so many instruments, and he played absolutely amazing. And in my flute part, there were some techniques that I wasn't sure how to perform when I practiced it on my own. But after listening to him at the rehearsal, I immediately knew what I should do. So I think that in contemporary music, it so much depends when you have possibility to listen to other flutists that do something properly. Because just reading the books, as I learned at the beginning of my career, just reading textbooks and trying to imagine what is supposed to come out of my flute, and then listening exactly. Oh yes, this is it. It should sound like that.
Speaking of books, a little bird told me that our humble organization, Flute New Music Consortium, makes a little cameo in your PhD thesis. What is your PhD thesis about?
My PhD thesis is about collaboration between flutists and composers, but I emphasize different roles of the flutist during the composition process. And I wanted to study how the whole process from the inspiration, from the commission looks like up to the recording, promoting the ready piece, how it looks like. So I divided it into 4 chapters for the inspiration, because even if you think about the new piece, how it comes into life, it can happen in several ways. Traditionally, it was like composer wrote a piece, gave it to the musician, and the musician premiered. Or the musician and artist could commission, but doesn't say anything about what the piece should be. I think in the modern era, it developed into very close collaboration, and the closer collaboration between the composer and the instrumentalist, the closer this connection is, the better pieces are. Then the other instrumentalists can easily pick up the score and know exactly what to do with the piece. So I also studied this close collaboration like Kaja Saariaho and Camila Hoitenga. In fact, I met Camila Hoitenga in Portugal. She was one of the members of the jury at the competition. And then we stay later in touch. When you look in the pieces of Kaja Saariaho, the first piece, I think it's. I don't wonder that when Camila first saw the piece in Darmstadt, that the piece looked a little bit strange. But later on, they worked so much together, and the pieces that Camila performed, several pieces, they became like really masterpieces, because I know as a flutist that when I take the flute part of pieces by Kaja Sarajevo, that everything works over there, that everything is possible. Sometimes in the performance notes, you cannot read everything how it should be performed. But I know that it is possible. I just have to find the way that Camila probably did it. So sometimes I even watch the videos of her to see the little secrets that maybe she uses. This is the beginning of the process of new piece, new composition. But later on, this important aspect of experimenting on contemporary techniques. Even if you look in the textbooks by Robert Dick or Pierre Farto, they are already over 40 years old, and new things have developed. And composers demand from us new things, and sometimes we even don't know how to notate it. So, for example, I worked with several composers on tangrams, and I realized how I can differ the color of tangrams according to the wishes of the composer. Because before this actual pop sound, you can put more or less air before actual stop. So in the music of Helmut Lafrenmann, the tangram is very short, like it stops immediately. On the other hand, if you put less or more air before the tangram, it creates some different atmosphere. But how to notate it? So I worked on it really for several years. Then Chinese composer Hong Shufan. And then this year, I worked with a young composer. She was writing a flute concerto for me. And she wanted really to learn and to nate specifically what she wants. And this tangram, she wanted me to play some air before pop sound. And we discussed the idea how to notate the timing. We also examined we studied the score of Bite for bass flute by Rebecca Saunders. And she uses this kind of air and then stop, but it's like little crescendo with sforzato, but there is no exact timing where the stop should happen, because this piece is for solo flutists, and it's no need to be so precise in the rhythm. On the other hand, when Kinga Wójcik, this young student of composition, when she was writing, it was for flute and ensemble. So she wanted the stop on the exact moment. So I came up with the idea that first she notated just the fingering, for example, quaver with the dot, and the last 16th notes, we put the down note, the sounding note of the tongue stop. And so I wanted to differentiate the name between tangram and tongue stop. So stop is like at the exact moment. Yeah, something like that. I think it sounds really complicated, but if you see the music, it would feel quite obvious.
It sounds like the difference between putting a grace note on the beat or putting it before the beat, except instead of the grace note and the real note, it's more the parts of the tangram.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if the pop sound of the tongue stop should happen with the other instruments, that I really need to know on which beat, on which section to play it.
Well, that's going to give me something to obsess over the next time I play tangrams.
Sounds like a very cool effect. I mean, I guess I've only ever played tangrams in solo literature. I've never gotten a chance to coordinate them with anybody else.
As she was talking, that was exactly. I can think of 2 or 3 pieces that I've used them in, but it's always alone. And so, yeah, if you have someone else, the timing matters differently.
And I remember working with Helmut Lachenmann. He once came to Katowice. It was several years ago. And he was invited to Music Academy, and he had to rehearse this with my ensemble section for a few hours with just string, a few hours with brass section, and then the flutist. There were 2 of us playing in this piece. And he asked us to play the tangram. I played, my colleague played, And no, this is not what it should sound. And at that moment, at the time in my career, it was like over 10 years ago, I thought that I knew how to play tangram, but certainly it didn't match his imagination of this kind of sound. And now I feel that I can understand now what he meant 10 years ago. Tangram is quite fascinating technique.
You mentioned collaborations with several composers. We know a little bit about a collaboration with composer Allison Ogden on a project called Dark Sky. Could you tell us a little bit about how you met Allison and maybe tell our listeners about the project?
Yes, so Alison Ogden, she's American composer, not far from Omaha. She stays in the University of Louisville. And actually, her husband is also a composer. He's Polish. So first, I knew this Polish composer. We collaborated several times on different projects. And then he told me about his wife, that she's a composer. And we got in touch and discussed what we could do together. So when she was in Poland last year, we met and we decided that it should be for alto flute. So I brought alto flute for our meeting, and we were experimenting on different sounds that can be produced just on the head joint. It was her idea, and because I had several pieces, especially by Salvatore Sciaino, that I played on just on the head joint. I played some of the techniques. She asked me to do something sometimes I think strange, but I really tried. We experimented, and then she worked on the score, and of course we communicated online and discussed the piece. So eventually the piece is for alto flute and electronic, but it's a fixed electronic with no live elements. But in the end, and the premiere was in November last year in Poland, in Gdańsk. And Alison came especially to Poland for this concert. And before the concert, of course, we met, we discussed. And when she saw me performing her piece during the rehearsal, we discussed it. Maybe it's possible to put also some movement, I mean, on the stage. So like a musical theater, something like that. So at the beginning, I sat at the table and flute was hidden. And I had just the head joint. And then when I'm one moment of waking up, I put as a surprise the rest of the flute and moved to the music stand and played the rest of the piece. So we also changed some of the techniques that didn't work as she imagined. On the day of the concert, it was absolutely no problem. And this is absolutely great, when the composers is open to suggestions from the performer, and when the instrumentalist is also open to do the very last changes in the score, in the techniques that are required, then the performance, I think it was really very, very good performance. And this July, we recorded the piece when she again came to Poland, to Katowice, recorded just my flute part, and then she will edit it and mix together with the electronics. And hopefully we want also to maybe commission some video, artistic animation to match the music and present it as a whole piece.
We're pretty excited to meet you and actually hear part of that project at our New Music Festival in October. Can you tell us about any other projects you've got going on?
Yes. So besides the chamber music that I play with a New Music Orchestra, we have different plans. Quite usually we have very busy autumn. It works like that. But I recently I have applied for a personal scholarship, and I want to do artistic residency at a new multimedia lab here in my hometown. Last year it was opened. I had the opportunity to perform there on the opening weekend. This is absolutely amazing. I mean, they have an audio system with 32 channels for electronics. So the audience is surrounded by sound. And I have already commissioned a piece that I could perform over there using this amazing possibilities. Keep your fingers crossed.
Keep us posted. You sound so flexible and you sound like a very open-minded person who has an improvisatory approach to life, approach to musical life, which is excellent. I can't think of a better trait in an artist. Your composers are very lucky to get to work with you.
But on the other hand, as a mother, I am quite, as a family, I want to have everything planned beforehand and work steadily on everything. And as my other side, this artistic part, is really so open to experiment and improvisation.
Our favorite last question to ask our guests. Could you name 3 pieces of music you think we should listen to?
I have thought about it. And I would definitely recommend you 3 pieces by Polish composers. Why not? So Agata Zubel, Not I. It's a piece written by amazing singer and composer. She wrote the piece for herself. It's soprano and 6 instruments, like in Schoenberg's Pied Lunaire. And it won Rostrum Composers Award about 10 years ago. One of the most difficult pieces I've ever played, but amazing. We also recorded it for Polish edition. So the second piece, it's Flute and Electronics, Sławomir Kupczak, and the title is Halny. It wasn't written for me, but the other great flutist from Poland. And this piece also won a recommendation from composer Rostrum. Halny, it's a famous Polish wind in the mountains. So, this inspiration of wind, and the wind is quite dangerous. I mean, maybe not like a hurricane, but still quite inspiring. And the third piece, it's from my CD. It's the only recording that it's available. This is composed by Nikolet Burzyńska, young composer. I think she's quite making a career right now. And Green Mazurka is for flute, cello, and piano. Quite difficult, but it uses so many colors, both in flute and cello and piano, playing on the piano with a string, bowing on the string inside the piano, something like that. And it mixes amazingly. So I'm really happy with this recording. It's available on YouTube. And I think the score is available from the composer directly. Green Mazurka. Mazurka, it's a Polish traditional dance. So this connection, and you can feel this dance in her music. So she combines some traditional sounds with contemporary techniques and quite spectrum music, something like that, and some rhythmical sections. So very diverse and concise in a form, and inspiring, I think. I highly recommend it.
Fantastic. I'll include those in the show notes. Well, Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great talking to you, and it'll be great to be in Omaha with you at the festival.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Really, with the new pieces that I'm going to premiere, I'm excited about it. The first piece is Alicja. The title is, I think the composer really found the idea how to combine my new path, this flute and electronics, so Alicja.
We're excited too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Music Crush. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also support the podcast, read show notes, and learn more about FNMC by visiting www.flutenewmusicconsortium.com.